A really exciting weekend for Duke University men's basketball. A new commit via the transfer portal, and we officially have the first roster for Jon Scheyer as he takes over as the head coach of Duke University men's basketball. We will discuss all of that coming up right here on today's edition of Locked On Blue Devils.
Dick Vitale, hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with JJ Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast here on this Monday, June 13th, 2022. My name is JJ Jackson, and I'm proud to serve as the host of this podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. Follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever you get your podcasts, as you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it comes out each day. Be sure to also subscribe to our Locked On Blue Devils YouTube page to watch the show daily. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen every single day. On today's show, I am so thrilled to bring on my good buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talk's Section 17 podcast. Jacob Grandison, an Illinois transfer, has decided to transfer to play for the Duke Blue Devils. He's rated as the number 5 available transfer in all of college basketball, a knockdown shooter, instantly will be able to contribute to Duke as they go into this upcoming season. So we're going to discuss all of that on today's show. Josh, I really appreciate the time as always. If folks are watching us on YouTube, you're sporting a really cool shirt. I got to start with this right away. Tell me all about it.
Yeah, man. So the Section 17 podcast did a little merch drop today, in fact. And these bleed blue shirts, they are royal blue with the bleed blue on them. Got our little new podcast logo underneath there. But yeah, these went on sale today. And so you can hit our Twitter timeline up at Duke FB Talk. You'll see the information there, how you can order. But yeah, really cool. And we're excited about getting these in people's hands. We've already had a lot of pre-orders and people ordering them today. So yeah, we're getting out a big shipment in the morning.
Well, I've put my order in. I'm going to be looking forward to one day when we're having this conversation. And I'm sporting my bleed blue shirt as well, because that's certainly something that we do. And I tell you what, we're bleeding more blue after this weekend when Jon Scheyer picks up a commitment in the transfer portal. It wasn't A.J. Green. It wasn't Courtney Ramey. It wasn't any of the names that we've kind of heard of over the summer here. But it was Jacob Grandison, who's coming over from Illinois. Also played at Holy Cross. Let's talk a little background. Like, who is Jacob Grandison, Josh Cox, and how big of a pickup is this for Duke?
Well, number one, Jacob Grandison is a grown man, and that's a good thing. You mentioned his 2 previous stops, meaning that this guy's played at multiple levels in the NCAA field. You know, he's played smaller, he's played Big Ten, and now getting his chance at Duke. And so I think what we're getting is a well-traveled man who's got maturity about him, who's been in, 3-4 different locker rooms over the years, has been able to manage those locker rooms, be a part of those locker rooms. And I believe he brings some experience, some much-needed experience to this Duke roster that's going to be full of freshmen and other transfers. And, it's different, isn't it? It's just different now with college basketball on a level like Duke. You literally have a brand new roster every year, with us only returning a couple of players from last year. So I think having more guys like Jacob Grandison coming in as transfers that have been in the college system for 2, 3, 4 years helps us a lot more. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do and how Jon Scheyer can utilize him and he can help our team.
Duke has announced his signing already, which is a great thing to happen. Sometimes it takes a little bit in the transfer portal process for things to become official, but it is official. Jacob Grandison is coming over to play for the Blue Devils. As mentioned, he did play 2 seasons for Holy Cross, had an injury, sat out a year. He still got a year of COVID-19 eligibility. Originally, his hometown being Oakland, California, played some prep basketball before entering college in New Hampshire, played in 30 games this past season, starting 23 of them for the Fighting Illini, and it really is that three-point shot. 41% as a three-point shooter in Power 5 basketball, the Big Six, if you want to include the Big East competition as well there. This is a proven player, and man, he can shoot it from the outside.
Yeah, shout out to Brian Horace, Duke Blogger for this, but took a dive into his numbers, not just that he shot 41%, but that from the corners.
Yeah.
He was like on fire from the corners. And I think one of the corners, the right corner, maybe he was at like 60% or something crazy. But I love that. I love the fact that we have a guy that can spot up and shoot. And, you know, one of the things that sometimes it seems like we've lacked, maybe not last year, we shot the ball well last year. But, you know, oftentimes a lot of these athletes that are coming out of high school, their shots are not yet refined. You know what I mean? They haven't had those years to really put in the work. So we're getting a guy that, once again, this is going to now be up to Coach Shire and the staff to get him in positions to where he can score. I was watching some of the highlights and clips of him, and he ran some actions with Kofi Coburn, you know, getting him open in the corner because people had turned their attention to Coburn, which, you know, Derek Lively is a different player than Kofi Coburn, but maybe they're able to space the floor. I think the key for Grandison to be the most successful is, can the coaching staff get him into the corners and get him open looks? And so I was texting a friend of mine who's a big Illinois fan, who didn't really understand what Duke was needing. And his biggest takeaway from Grandison was that he enjoyed watching him play defense. And so I've honestly not looked that deeply into his defense, but that would be an added bonus if our wing defenders were Tyreese Whitehead, and if Grandison could defend on an elite level. That would be really, really, really good for us.
And good length as well for Grandison, who stands 6'6" this past season. A top 20 game against Michigan State. He scored 24 points on a career-high 6 made three-point buckets. So in big primetime games, he's able to knock down big shots. That was also a road game, by the way, at Michigan State, where you got that kind of performance from Grandison, who's going to walk in instantly and play in really big venues like the ACC has to offer. It is always a show, no matter where in America Duke University men's basketball goes. The opposing team wants to make it a make-or-break type game. So big time announcement there from Grandison, who comes over and plays now for the Duke Blue Devils. Let's take one quick timeout. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about what this move means, and some other roster notes for Duke University men's basketball. Today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's NBA Finals matchup. Tonight, we've got Game 5 between the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors. The series tied at 2 games apiece. The NHL Stanley Cup Finals between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Colorado Avalanche. Major League Baseball, and, of course, all the fighting news that you need from MMA and UFC. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. As we welcome you back in here to Locked On Blue Devils, my name is JJ Jackson, alongside my good buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Jacob Grandison, the newest transfer for Duke. And Josh, we weren't able to connect last week on Locked On Blue Devils. And since we've last spoke here on the program, Tyreese Proctor reclassified. Major news when you look at what Duke's roster could be going into next season. I mean, this is big. Within a 1 week span, Duke all of a sudden is adding Tyreese Proctor and now Jacob Grandison.
Yeah, and I really like what that presents to us, because I think it's pretty obvious that 4 of the 5 starting spots are locked up, with Jeremy Roach at the 1, with Tyreese Whitehead being on the wing at either the 2 or the 3. Those are kind of interchangeable now anyway. And then Filipowski and Lively as our 2 bigs. Filipowski really playing more on the wing, than he does as a big. But it's going to be interesting to see. I personally believe we're going to see Grandison, because of his just his history and his experience, probably earlier in the year. we'll probably see him get that starting nod, and that'll move Whitehead a little bit. But it would not surprise me at all if he lives up to his potential. Seeing a guy like Tyreese Proctor maybe earning that starting spot, by the time ACC play comes around. I'd love to see that because I love his game. Just watching some of the clips of him, I love the fact that he and Roach could really be like a point guard tandem in a sense. And Duke has been very successful in the past. I think 2015, when they kind of have two guys that they can score in Quinn Cook and Tyus Jones, but they also can run an offense, both of them individually. So I like that. But once again, these two moves are huge for us because they give us options. And if you think back to the last time we spoke, JJ, we were thinking, what do we do if we get no one added to this roster? How does that look? And so within a week's time, we've had a reclassification and now the transfer. And so what it does is it gives Coach Shire options, and that's what we need. And so it'll be interesting to see what we come out with in the fall. And then by the time the nitty-gritty January, February rolls around, see where we're sitting as far as the lineups are concerned.
The conversation has greatly shifted. You're right, because all of a sudden we were talking, okay, if Keels doesn't come back, if he stays in the NBA draft process, and we don't get AJ Green, and we don't get any other transfers, Tyreese Proctor reclassifying wasn't on the radar whatsoever. Like, nobody really saw that coming. That just speaks to what Jon Scheyer has behind the scenes. The man's always working, trying to kind of make sure the Duke program's ready to rock and roll. And as you said it perfectly, here we are. We've got two guys that are going to play. Right, they're going to play. They're going to be in the mix. Duke also announced today what Brendan Marks had reported last week, that Max Johns is going to transfer over from Princeton. Again, not a significant piece by any stretch of the imagination, but does have Division I basketball playing experience at Princeton in the Ivy League. So the roster continues to evolve and develop, and here we are with this Duke team going into next season. Give me a little bit more on Tyreese Proctor, though, Josh. Like, what excites you about him so much? Because I tell you what, he's someone that came out of nowhere in the recruiting scene for the class of 2023 even. Then he commits. Once you commit to Duke, you can get a little bit of a bump in the recruiting rankings, which we're certainly grateful for. And now, all of a sudden, he's going to get to factor right away for next year's team.
Yeah, he is your international guard. You look at guys, and I look at a player like a Tony Parker, that played for the Spurs for all those years, Hall of Famer. And I see some of those playmaking skills. I do think he's got to polish his game up a little bit. I haven't extensively watched a ton of tape, but I've watched some of his tape and then read guys who have followed him extensively. And sometimes his willingness to be a passer can get him in trouble. I think that's understandable as a kid his age. Maybe trying to do a little bit too much there passing the ball. But I think we can expect like what the NBA game is moving toward in this international play. If you look at the NBA right now, like its top 5 players in the league, most of them are international guys. And this basketball is turning that style. And I think Tyreese fits that. And it'll be in the college game. So it'll be interesting because the college game has not necessarily morphed at the same rate that the NBA has morphed. But I believe you're going to see a guy that's, my opinion is he's going to play in the league and he's going to be that new guy. I like maybe a guy that's not an international player that I can maybe put him in with as like a Tyrese Halliburton type player who I really like. Tyrese Halliburton. Can't believe the Sacramento Kings dealt him. Anyway, it's not an NBA podcast. But I can see him, honestly.
They share the same first name, so the comparison fits already.
But he's the kind of guy that, like, if you watch Halliburton play, you may not be, like, jaw-dropping watching him play, but at the end of the night, he has 19 points, 8 assists, 9 rebounds, right? Like, that's the kind of player that Halliburton is. I think that's the kind of player Proctor can turn into. Maybe not this first year, maybe not in his freshman year, but I believe that's the potential that he has, is that kind of guy that you're like, man, did he really score 16 tonight? And he had 11 boards from the guard position. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's that kind of guy that just, you don't realize it, but he's just a stat stuffer, and I think he's going to be really good for us.
Josh Cox from Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast is joining us here today on a Monday edition of Locked On Blue Devils. And the best part about Tyreese Proctor reclassifying is because there was some rumblings. We mentioned kind of coming out of nowhere in the recruiting process. And then you start to hear, similar to what Kentucky experienced this past season with Shaden Sharp, that maybe he doesn't even play at all. Maybe he would have been able to become eligible for next year's NBA draft and not come and play for Duke. Well, now we get to see him this season. It still allows for time for Jaden Schutt to get some opportunity as a freshman this upcoming season, but maybe not as much pressure, which I think excites people. I'm not changing my narrative. Jaden Schutt can play right away and will be able to contribute for the Duke basketball team, but it just helps everybody out for what this roster could be going into next season.
Yeah. By the way, you have to get Jaden on the podcast because
I need to,
and you got to let him know that you're his biggest fan. Like you got to let him know. Like no, but I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Here's what I say about a player like Schutt. You can't compare him to John Shire in one sentence as a player, and then say, but he ain't gonna be ready to play. Like you can't tell me both of those things are true. Like if we want to compare him to John Shire, maybe he's not gonna be a incredible player as a freshman, but he's going to be able to contribute as a freshman, and he's going to get better every year. I am 100% on that train. Like I love the comparison to Coach Shire, and I even think Coach Shire has like acknowledged a little bit of like that he reminds himself, that he reminds him of himself.
Yeah, and
so I love that. I think it's going to be good. Once again, all of a sudden we have depth in the backcourt. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, on the wings, with Mark Mitchell, Tyreek Whitehead, which, by the way, we aren't even talking about Mark Mitchell,
right?
Who's going to probably come off the bench, and he's awesome. We're not even talking about him, but now we have depth. And if I'm Coach Shire, I am very happy with where this roster has landed.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the roster. It's now set in stone, and we're going to do that after this last time out here on this Monday edition of Locked On Blue Devils. Again, JJ Jackson alongside Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. The ultimate NBA mock draft starts June 16th. With over 50 insiders, nothing equals the ultimate NBA mock draft. The Locked On NBA Big Board draft experts plus the Odyssey insiders. First pick is June 16th. Search Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and follow now so you don't miss a pick. Welcome back into this Monday edition of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. All right, so this roster is set in stone. We know what it's going to look like for Duke as they go into next season. I saw earlier today that Brendan Marks, our friend from The Athletic, did a great job for us of kind of putting out there what it looks like for the Blue Devils as they go in to this next season. And you take a look at what Duke is looking at going into next year. Of course, you've got Jeremy Roach, Jalen Blakes, Tyreese Proctor, Jaden Schutt, and what he deemed the guards. The wings, Tyreek Whitehead, Jacob Grandison, Kale Catchings, and Mark Mitchell. And then your bigs on the interior, Derek Lively II, Kyle Filipowski, Ryan Young, the Northwestern transfer, and Christian Reeves, who's likely to redshirt. All in all, what do you make of that roster? Because I'm really excited.
Yeah, I like the roster a lot. I'm a little concerned at our depth down low. And I know that everyone's saying that Reeves is going to redshirt, and that was the plan. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we're one injury. You know what I mean? We're one sprained ankle away from needing some more depth. And that wouldn't surprise me if Reeves, came in and actually contributed. But I love our bigs, man. I mean, Lively and Filipowski, they have potential, man. Like, Lively's so big, and he's like Mark Williams, build and length and stuff. But I think with a little bit more polished offense at this stage of his career. And Filipowski, man, I think Filipowski's like your old school, he's your old school college basketball player, man. And I love that. And then of course our wings. I mean, I don't know, Tyreek Whitehead. I don't know if he can be overlooked because a lot of places have him top 3 and he won a player of the year. I know, but for some reason I feel like he's kind of flying under the radar. And this dude is an incredible basketball player. He's an incredible defender. And so I love our wings, and I love like a guy like Mark Mitchell being able to come off the bench, and maybe even a Grandison, depending on who starts in that backcourt. It wouldn't surprise me, though, to see like a Whitehead and Grandison start together and just have 2 6'6" wings out there. Because who knows anymore? What's the difference between a wing and a guard and like a 2 and a 3 and really sometimes a 4? What's the difference? Like they're all kind of the same. And then I love the fact that Jeremy Roach is obviously going to be Jeremy's team. And Duke fans just better be prepared for that. Whatever that looks like, it's going to be Jeremy's team. But I do like Jalen. I mean, Jalen, he didn't play a ton, obviously, last year, but he was here and he was in practices and he got in the culture. And I believe he's the kind of kid that, like, if his number's called, I think he'll be prepared. And so I like the roster the way it is. I believe we actually have a chance to be a really, really good defensive team. And I think that bodes well for Duke basketball.
We mentioned frequently our partners at BetOnline. Again, go to betonline.net for all your wagering information. And just to kind of contextualize where Duke is at now that the roster is set, going over all of those positions, looking at national championship odds for next season, the 2023 Final Four, who's on top to win it all next season? Gonzaga's got the best odds at 8-1, Houston at 10-1, Kentucky and UNC at 12-1, and then Duke, Kansas, and UCLA all at 14-1. So they're in the top 5 still are the Duke Blue Devils. It's a program that aspires for national championships every season. That shouldn't surprise anybody, but look, Vegas still thinks Duke has what it takes to win it all once it comes to the next season. And I tend to agree with Vegas. They're right more times than not. This roster is really complete. I love the shooting versatility of this team. I think shooting instantly gets an upgrade from what we saw this past season. And by the way, Duke had some clutch shooters on last year's roster. And then just the bigs that you can work with as well. Like, I'm really excited to see this team come together. They're going to be young. They're going to be a really young basketball team that's trying to figure it out together on the fly. But at least you've got that steady hand in Jeremy Roach to lead the way.
Yeah, and by the way, by all means, put all the pressure in Chapel Hill. Like, make him preseason number 1. It's national championship or bust. Like, do to those guys what happens to Duke every single year.
Yeah.
Put those expectations on so that way anything less than a national title is a failure. And I think that would be awesome. But no, I think you're right. Vegas tends to know what they're talking about. And I will say this. If we get late season Jeremy Roach improved, like the guy who, when we needed a bucket, no one could stay in front of him. He could get into the lane, Chris Paul mid-range. If that Jeremy Roach comes back and plays next year with just that confidence that he developed, man, I think this team could go places. Because, if you look at the other guys, the question becomes, who's going to score when the offense is broke down and you got 5 seconds left on the shot clock? Well, Jeremy Roach is the answer.
Yeah.
And if Jeremy Roach can continue to be the player that he was at the end of last season, I'm going to love our chances this year. I don't know that we'll win a national title. I mean, I think that's crazy. You think of John Shire's first year, all these different things. But I think this is going to be a good team, and we'll go far, especially because they can play defense. And if Jeremy Roach – I mean, look, we said on this podcast and use the name Kyrie Irving, with some of the plays that Jeremy was making at the end of the year. And I'm not saying he's Kyrie Irving. I hope he has anyway. I digress. But if he can play that role, I mean, it would be incredible. And then it's a shoe-in. Jeremy becomes a lottery pick. He becomes a guy that the NBA scouts are looking at, going like, this is our Kyle Lowry. This is our CP3. Yeah. Like, this is our guy. So I think this season's going to ride on him. He's going to be our leader. He's going to be our captain. And I'll be honest with you, if you'd have told me a year ago that's where we were sitting, I'd have been like, oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
But I'm cool with it, man. I'm all in on Jeremy Roach. Let's go.
Let's do it. We're ready for it. We're ready to see what the Duke team can accomplish in the coming season. Josh, as always, I appreciate the time. You're one of my best friends doing this, and I appreciate you always taking time out of your week to be with us on Locked On Blue Devils. We got an exciting basketball team to root for, and as we're a week or so away from summer officially kicking off on your calendar, that means we're so much closer to football season as well. So you and I have plenty of fun conversations coming our way over the next few weeks.
We do, and I think we are 11 days away from the NBA draft.
Yeah.
Mark
No
Mitchell
kidding.
got the green room invite today. We're going to definitely have some good stuff to talk about basketball-wise.
Mark Williams. We're hoping Mark Mitchell one day.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Mark Williams. My bad.
We've been talking about next year's team too much. But, we've got Paulo, AJ Griffin, and Mark Williams all with green room invites, which tends to make it believe that, hey, we got 3 lottery picks on our way for Duke men's basketball. All right, Josh, we'll talk to you again next week, okay?
Thanks, JJ. Have a great night, man.
That is Josh Cox joining us here on this Monday edition of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. Like and subscribe this video on YouTube and your podcast platform as well. As always, go Duke. We'll talk to you again soon. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.